Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we're going to be reviewing the third film in the Bad Boys trilogy, Bad Boys for Life. Now, for me, I love the Bad Boys films. I know they're not everyone's cup of tea, especially my tag team partner, Coco Krokowski's, but I've grown up with the Bad Boys series. When the first one came out in 1995, it was a birthday movie for me because it came out right around my birthday. And then Bad Boys 2 came out, which I still say to this day, if Bad Boys 2 had not come out and done what it did in terms of summer popcorn explosion, just action thrill ride, the Fast and the Furious movies would not be what they are today. Yes, Fast and the Furious was out before Bad Boys 2, but it was still just the kind of streetcar racing, kind of like Point Break kind of thing. Whereas when Bad Boys 2 came out in 2003, it just did something different than a lot of the films of previous. And I feel like the Fast and the Furious franchise looked at Bad Boys 2 as a staple point and said, we need to be more like that. And that's where I think the Fast and the Furious came from in terms of the action-packed thrill ride film. So I think that they have a lot to thank for the Bad Boys franchise for that. Now, going into this film obviously is 15 years after Bad Boys 2. And we get Will Smith and Martin Lawrence back, which is great because I don't think this movie would work necessarily without them. We got a whole new cast of kind of like backups for them, which I think did a real solid job. We got new villains. And just it was just so nice to see these guys back on screen together again. So let's go ahead and jump into the review and see exactly what I thought of Bad Boys for Life. Now, the plot, like I said, takes place 15 years after episode 2, Bad Boys 2. Now, they don't really say how much time has passed for these characters, but it's definitely a jump ahead in terms of time for these characters. But basically what's going on is Martin, aka Marcus, is looking to finally retire and hang it up for the duo, because he's at the beginning of the film he becomes a grandfather, which that had a nice little nod to the sequel for anyone who loves Reggie. That was a nice little nod. But it's time for Marcus to hang up his badge and gun, which really upsets Mike because obviously Mike is Bad Boys for Life. They ride, they die together. But when an assassination attempt on Mike causes things to kind of halt, it becomes a revenge story on both sides, as the villains want revenge against Mike, and Mike wants revenge against them for trying to kill him. And it becomes a race against the clock on who's going to take out who first, Mike and Marcus working together again, or the new villains trying to take out Mike. And that's basically the plot of Bad Boys for Life. Now, what works with Bad Boys for Life? Obviously, Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, they're fantastic together. They have this great chemistry, comedic energy between one another. They bounce off each other beautifully. They've done that in the first two films, and that's not going to change in this film. I also liked the new cast of characters that we got this time around, now, because it is, today we have a different generation of cops who use a lot of high tech and technologies with drones and all this kind of stuff. And the old school days of running and gunning like Marcus and Mike do are now days of the past. So they have to work together with this new techie crew, led by Rita, played by Paula Nunez. I thought she did a really great job. She's got a pass with Mike, but I thought that I've never really seen her in anything that personally. But I think the actress Paula Nunez, I thought she did a real solid job. I feel like this is a good introduction to her as an actress. Like I said, she doesn't have it's not like she has this overglowing performance, mind you. But I feel like she did a really good job in the film overall. She's a very Gabrielle Union kind of character, like in Bad Boys 2. But I felt like she worked really well in it, and this could potentially lead her up to more roles in America. She's more a Spanish actress. We got Alexander Ludwig, who plays Dorn. He's the muscular techie guy. People who saw Hunger Games or watched the TV show Vikings, you guys will know who he is. I really liked his character. He's this character with a a dark past, so he doesn't like to resort to violence, even with his gigantic stature. I think he did a real solid job in his performance for what he was asked to do. Rafi, played by Charles Melton, he's basically the new Mike Lowry, where he's basically overly cocky, always smart mouth, and him and Mike obviously battle quite a bit in this film. But once they kind of learn each other's ways, they actually develop a pretty cool little friendship, like a little buddy friendship. That was actually really enjoyable throughout. You got Vanessa Hudgens, she plays Kelly. To me, the coolest role Vanessa Hudgens has been, and she's a badass in this movie, and I really liked her performance overall. And like I said, this new group, they call themselves Ammo. I really liked them, and this movie basically does open the door for potential future Bad Boys films and down the road, kind of almost like a Fast and the Furious kind of thing. And with these kids in Ammo working with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, I like the possibilities of what we could get down the road with future films, because I feel like this young group and Will Smith and Martin Lawrence actually worked really well together, and the possibilities are wide open for these characters, and it actually leaves the door very positively for potential future films. The villains this time around, they're very mysterious because for some reason they want Mike dead, but we just don't quite know why. As the film goes on, you figure that out. I don't know if I fully buy into what the whole thing was that they wanted to kill Mike for. I mean, it works. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's just I don't know if I was necessarily a fan of what they ended up doing with that character. It's a big twist in the end, near the end of the film, with Mike and these villains. The villains are played by Kate Del Castillo, who plays Isabel Artis, and her son Jacob Cispio. I know I'm saying that wrong. He plays Armando. Great action actor Jacob is. I feel like his fight scenes in this were really well choreographed, and he definitely puts a nice foil into the duo of Martin and Will in this film, unlike the previous films where you had these lead drug deal bad guys and they just had generic henchmen taking on Mike and Marcus. Whereas with this one, yes, he's got drone guys, but he can handle himself. He can fight them both. And he is a legitimate threat in the movie for Marcus and Mike. And because of that, it definitely adds an element of danger, because there's no guarantee that everyone makes it out of this one alive. Joey Pants, he's back. And I call him Joey Pants because I can never say his last name correctly. But he's back as Captain Howard Pantoliano. I think I just said it right. But he's back as Captain Howard. If you like his performance as Captain Howard, then you'll enjoy him in this. Like I said, most people are back. Most, I say that, and I'll get to those people in the what doesn't work. But the action still works really good. It's different, uniquely shot approaches, especially in the third act or the big final battle. I really liked how the camera angles were adjusted for the final battle in this. Real unique choices and options that they went with. Like I said, most of the action sequences that we did get in this film, I thought were incredibly well done. It's shot beautifully. The Miami landscape looks gorgeous in the way that they shot this film. This is the first Bad Boys film not done by Michael Bay, but he does get an appearance in the movie, which I thought was kind of funny. But I thought it was a solid job for a sequel that we haven't gotten in 15 years. There was a lot riding on this in terms of Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, because they didn't want to come back to this unless they had a good script. I think the script was solid throughout, but the one lingering thing that I have, which I'll get to, is what causes it from being better than the previous two films. I do think as a whole, the movie itself is probably the best put together film in the Bad Boys trilogy. But in terms of overall fun, enjoyment, rewatchability, it's probably right around Bad Boys 1 for me, whereas Bad Boys 2 to me is probably the most fun one to watch, and the one that you can really just kind of rewatch or pick up at any moment and just enjoy doing that. This one, like I said, it's got its fun moments, it's got its funny moments, and it's got some great action sequences, but the rewatchability is not quite there as it is with Bad Boys 2. Going with what does not work with Bad Boys for Life, my main issue is it's just not like I kind of just said, it's just not as fun. You're watching it and you're watching the characters, and it feels like almost like kind of every other cop movie in a sense, or like, and a lot of that probably comes to is what we got from Bad Boys 2. It's a little more grounded a little bit in the sense compared to Bad Boys 2, and because of that and all the Fast and the Furious films, we are expecting this huge spectacle of action and explosions and all this kind of stuff. And this one, yes, we do get that, but not nearly as much or as frequently as we did in Bad Boys 2. So it does tend to not drag per se, but it does take a little bit to get the movie itself going. It takes about a good 30 to 45 minutes for this film to really get into any kind of action sequences because of what happens in the film. Martin Lawrence does a solid job in it, but you can tell that Martin is probably the least motivated in this film. I enjoyed him in this movie because I love Martin Lawrence as Marcus. But if this franchise is to continue, Marcus is the one character which, if they were going to break someone off, it would be, if it was Marcus, the franchise would still grow on and do well. If they lost Will Smith, then don't bother trying to make another one of these movies. But if Martin Lawrence decided to wrap it up and not do another one, I could totally understand and respect that, because he's probably the one person in this franchise that could easily bow out and the movie could still move on to future projects. The big problem too is that they do separate Marcus and Mike in the film for a good 20 plus minutes. And that's the essence of Bad Boys is these two on screen together, playing off one another, action sequences together, and to basically separate these two, it definitely doesn't work quite as well. Now, by the end of this movie, I could totally be okay with that, if Martin Lawrence decided not to come back. But when you've been waiting 15 years for a sequel from these two, the last thing you want to do is not see them together on screen. And that, for about a good 20 minutes of the film, you don't have that, and it really hurts the film overall. But then once they do get back together, the movie gets right back on track and right back to enjoying it the way you should. Like I said, the villains were really great, but I wasn't a fan of the whole twist near the end of the film. I thought it was very soap opera-esque, the way they decided to do it, which they even teased that throughout the film, that it was going to be soap opera-like. It's one of those things where it's like, I just felt like it was a tacked on kind of twist that for me just didn't work for me. I'm not saying it doesn't work in the film. It just wasn't one that I personally enjoyed. And then one thing that continually kept bugging me personally is the timeline. Now, yes, I am not saying that when the first film came out in 1995, that it was 1995, and when Bad Boys 2 happened in 2003, it was 2003, and Bad Boys for Life is 2020. But it's kind of hard not to look at it that way, thinking that these characters are these, that span of time has happened through these characters. But obviously the kids of Marcus's, they didn't age like that. So this is not quite following the timeline of real life in terms that it's been 15 years or something like that. But there's multiple times in the film where they bring up years. And it doesn't work timeline wise unless the events of Bad Boys 2 happened 10 years ahead of what it was supposed to be. Like, the only way this timeline in this movie works is that the events of Bad Boys 2, which was in 2003, because that's when the film came out, would have been in the 2010s. Then maybe this film would work timeline wise, because the whole time I'm watching this and they're bringing up, so many years back and I'm thinking back to the first film in 1995, and I'm like, well, that doesn't work because of where these two characters were back in that time. And it was very frustrating for me throughout the film because they kept bringing that up and they kept changing it and adjusting it. And because of that, it was an annoying kind of tick going on the entire time I was watching this movie. Now, not a lot of people are going to pick that up, so it's not probably going to bother most people. But for me, I like a timeline that makes sense and a timeline that doesn't have any holes in it. And this one definitely has holes in it. There's also some editing issues throughout the film. There's certain parts where they show a dead body and it's got so much blood on it, but then like 5 minutes later they show that dead body again and it's got less blood. There's certain just like little technical issues like that just don't quite clean up certain things, where it's like this one area got shot, but then it comes back again and that there's no bullet shot there. Just little technical things. But nonetheless, it's still an enjoyable movie. If you're a fan of the Bad Boys franchise, you're still going to have a good time watching this movie. So going into overall thoughts for the Bad Boys for Life film, like I said, if you're a Bad Boys fan, like I am, you're still going to have a good time watching this movie. Never was I not having a good time watching this film. And yes, if they decide to continue on with more films, as the end of the film kind of led you to believe, I'm totally bought in. I'm totally ready to go with more of these films. I love these characters on screen. Even the new characters, I'm totally okay with them pushing those characters further on into the film franchise. So like I said, if you're a fan of Bad Boys, you're going to enjoy this movie. Just go in with middling expectations, so that way you'll enjoy it. If you go in with super high expectations, you're going to be a little disappointed, but it's still a very solid action film, and especially for it being released in January, which is usually considered the dumping off point for movies like Dolittle. It's not like that. It's a very solid January film. It's probably one of the better January movies that's been out in quite a long time. But yeah, it's a real solid enjoyment. I think you guys are really gonna like it. If you're not a fan of Bad Boys, like my tag partner Kirk Kowakowski, it's probably not going to change your mind. It's probably not going to make you a fan all of a sudden. But I do say, in terms of how a film is done, it is the best one of the three. So going into my overall score for Bad Boys for Life, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Like I said, it's still very enjoyable. It's funny. The action sequences are shot incredibly well. It's not as good as the second one, in my opinion. And I think it's probably still slightly better than the first one. If not the first one. So it's right there with Bad Boys 1. But still, it's nowhere as good as Bad Boys 2 in my eyes. But yes, a 7 out of 10 for that film. We're no longer going to be doing the top 10 of the year so far, just because it kind of gives away my thoughts throughout the entire year. And when I come out with my halfway through the year review or end of the year review, it doesn't really have that surprise factor anymore, because you guys have been seeing my process throughout the entire year. So we're not going to be doing that anymore. Just know that it's got a 7 out of 10. Clearly, obviously, right now, it's the number one movie of 2020. But it's the first movie, really, that's come out of 2020 outside of The Grudge and Dolittle. But yes, that is the review. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys feel like this review is worth sharing, go ahead and hit that share button. But most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay continually updated with all the latest videos that pop up on Sean's Movie Crusades. And of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Something that you guys are going to see now, or are going to at least attempt to try to do throughout the year, is I'm going to start doing 2 separate reviews, potentially 3 separate reviews for movies. I'm going to try to do more of a quick review for you guys. If you guys just want something quick, just like, Sean, just tell me if it's good or not, and if I'm going to like it. That's what the quick review is going to be. You guys see that one already popped up for Bad Boys. It's around 5 minutes long. If you guys want the more in-depth review where I talk more about the film and go over what I like and dislike, like you see in this review right here, you're still going to get those. They're not going away. We're just going to make kind of a more of a quick review for the people who literally can't sit down for 20 minutes and watch a good review. And then, of course, the bigger films, we'll have the Movie Crusaders on. We'll go over spoiler reviews over all the big movies of 2020, like we've been doing. But we're going to give you guys some more options for the upcoming year, so be on the lookout for those. Depending on what movie comes out, choose which review you would like to watch. But please support the channel, as you guys have always had. Coming out next week. That's a good question. What comes out next week? We'll see if we got any reviews coming up here. We got The Gentleman. I'm not a big Guy Ritchie fan, so I don't know if I'm going to check this movie out. And yes, I know in my best films of 2019, I did say that I would watch Dolittle. I can't bring myself to do it. I've heard too much about this film over the span of the last 24 hours to torture myself and make myself watch this film. So if you guys saw Dolittle, feel free to leave your comments on the Facebook page. Let me know what you thought of it. I just can't bring myself to do it. So yeah, there's not going to be a Dolittle review. I just can't make myself watch that movie. There might be a review for The Gentleman next week. I'm not 100% on that. Like I said, a lot of it just depends on, if there's good word of mouth, then I might check it out. And then on the 31st, you got Gretel and Hansel, and you've got Rhythm Section. like I said, those movies, they don't really entice me either, so I don't know if I'm going to check those out. The next big movie is Birds of Prey on the 7th of February, so I'll definitely be checking that one out. So be on the lookout for that review here in the next few weeks. But yeah, until next time, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.